If you have been through narcissistic abuse, if you have left a narcissistic relationship recently, or you are in the process of it, you feel completely devastated. You feel shattered and you feel like you have been reduced to a shell, to a shadow. But why? Why does it all happen? I mean, if you compare a narcissistic relationship and the damage that you get from it to a normal breakup, it's in no way comparable because the damage here is huge. It's beyond the levels of comprehension. Hi, I am Danish, a narcissistic abuse recovery professional, and today's episode is going to be all about understanding how you get traumatized in a narcissistic relationship. Before we get started, please make sure that you are subscribed to this YouTube channel if you're watching this episode on YouTube, and push the bell icon to stay updated with everything latest that I post over here. If you are listening to this episode on a podcast channel, please make sure that you follow and subscribe as well. So let's get started with the basic things. Let's try to understand trauma. What is trauma? Trauma is anything and everything that makes you feel resourceless, that debilitates your system and that shocks it, that overburdens it, and you feel helpless before the situation or the circumstance that you have been exposed to. That is the simplest definition of trauma. Now, let's look at the narcissistic relationship. Let's try to look at the full cycle of idealization, devaluation, and discard. And then let's try to understand where this traumatization happens and how, in what ways. Now, in the beginning with a narcissistic relationship, everything is very intense and everything is happening quite fast. There is love bombing. The narcissist is all charming, caring, kind, compassionate, present, all of the wonderful things that you know of. But then as time goes on, this person starts to change and turn into a version of theirs that is completely opposite to who they were in the beginning of the relationship. And what does that do? I mean, how is that perceived inside of you? Within your nervous system, within the deepest parts of your brain, it's almost perceived as a shell shock. It's a shock to your system because why? Because this is essentially a form of betrayal. You are promised a dream, but a nightmare is being delivered. How would you take it in? Of course, you would be affected and impacted by it. And you don't stop there only. What happens after that is, because there is a shock and disconnect and this change in the narcissist's behavior, you start questioning yourself. You start questioning your own actions and your behaviors, and you start wondering, maybe it's me who did something wrong. Maybe it's me who made them act and behave this way, and all of those justifications run in your head. On the top of that, the narcissist exposes you to the double treatment, two forms of relational dynamic. On one hand, they are treating you like a piece of trash. They're treating you like as if you don't matter. But on the other hand, when they see that you're about to leave the relationship, or when they see that they are about to lose control over you, they show you that nice side again. What does that do? I mean, it's almost like your brain is being constantly bombarded with conflicting information. And again, my question is, how would your brain and how would your nervous system take it in? 100% that it would be shocked, debilitated, overburdened. And what did I tell you in the beginning of the session? I mean, as I was explaining, defining trauma, you are traumatized. Let's move ahead. With this devaluation phase starting, and with every cycle that repeats itself, the cycle of idealization, and then you are extremely worried, walking on eggshells, anxious, stressed, and then they show you that nice side, give you that little breadcrumb, and you feel excited about it. You feel and think everything is back to the normal. With every cycle, you are re-traumatized again and again and again. How? Because the narcissist first deprives you of the resources, but then gives you that little breadcrumb. And as an adaptation to the circumstance that you have been put in, your brain makes this breadcrumb the whole bread. Even if it is insignificant, and an objective observer would be clearly able to say that this is insignificant, the thing they have done for you, it doesn't even matter, but for you it would be huge, it would be big. You would say it is one of the best things that I have ever experienced with them. Why? Because it's an adaptation, the change in your brain, the change in the pathways that process the perception of the connection in the brain. It is a change in the hormonal profile. You need to understand the biochemical changes that happen in a narcissistic relationship within your body are drastic, are destructive. Your cortisol levels, your adrenaline levels, noradrenaline levels, they are way off the limits, and dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, all of those great hormones, important hormones that are very essential for your proper regulation and stability, their levels are all the way low. And the narcissist, of course, they don't do it intentionally, but because of how the complex dynamics of this relationship work, they become the regulator of these hormones as well. To give you an example, the narcissist is treating you poorly, you are low on serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins, and you're then trying to look for a hit of, let's say, a dopamine hit, because again, it's because of the trauma bond and the addictive nature of the narcissistic relationship. Then you do things for them and try everything in your capacity to make it better. They give you a breadcrumb, you have a dopamine hit, and then you have this toxic cocktail of hormones that shape your behavior. What can be more traumatizing than that? It doesn't only happen in your brain, it happens in your body. Let's move ahead and see what happens later. With this devaluation happening, they put you down, they break you morally, psychologically, spiritually, physically, emotionally, and in all ways possible. They reduce you to a shell of yours. Why do you feel so insignificant? Where has your self-worth gone? Who has eaten up your self-esteem? Why is your self-concept so weak? It doesn't happen in a normal relationship, in a process of a normal breakup. It happens here because they ate it up. They basically broke you down slowly, reduced you to a version of yours that feels insignificant, that feels unworthy, that feels all of those things that they wanted you to feel, because by making you feel all of those things, it gave them more power to control over you. It made it easy for them to maintain that control over you. So that kind of traumatization, where you lose your emotional self, your psychological self, your physical self, your spiritual self, where you lose your faith in humanity, in the goodness of this world, what can be more traumatizing than that? Let's talk about betrayal for a moment. Count all the ways they have betrayed you. It's not just about cheating, it's about promising a future faking you that never existed. The loss of efforts, the loss of love, the loss of opportunities, the loss of time. Who's going to repay for that? All of those losses, they bring in grief because they come from betrayal. It's the biggest scam in my opinion. Surviving or being with a narcissist or ending up with a narcissist is just one of the biggest scams that you can ever survive in your life. So with this kind of betrayal, it gives you a moral wound and you're left with a heavy grief to carry. Because compared to a traditional process of grieving, where you're grieving, let's say, God forbid, a loved one dies, and then you have to go through those stages, and ultimately you come to the acceptance, okay, that they have passed away, you make your own conclusions and so on, you find some acceptance and peace. But what would you do with this person who is still alive, who is right in front of you, but you have to accept that they are dead, that everything that you had with them was a lie, that it was all an illusion? What can be more traumatizing than that? Talking about trauma, I may be wrong, but in my opinion, it's one of the most traumatizing experiences that you can ever go through. Because I have been through it myself, I know what I'm talking about. And those who are listening to me, you as you're listening to me, you know what it means to survive a scam like this. You know what it means to be promised a dream but have a nightmare delivered. You know what it means to fall in love with a facade and illusion and later find out that it was all a lie. How shocking is that? So, considering all of these elements, the different elements of a narcissistic relationship and the complicated dynamics, there is so much trauma. Your nervous system is often dysregulated, and I wouldn't say that it just is often dysregulated, it stays dysregulated most of the time. You have your sympathetic nervous system dominant, which is the part of our nervous system that stays dominant when we are in a survival state. And when you are in a survival state for years on a go, every single moment that you spend is spent surviving. What can be bigger trauma than that? It's like you are pressing the accelerator trying to, push the car forward, but your other foot is on the brake. What kind of impact would that have on the engine? Probably, I think this is an insignificant example, nowhere comparable to the kind of damage that your body, brain, soul, everything goes through, but I hope you get the idea. So with this repeated exposure to the traumatizing incidents, be it betrayal, cheating, abuse, belittling, gaslighting, manipulation, brainwashing, projecting, blame shifting, all of that BS that happens in a relationship, it traumatizes you and then re-traumatizes you and then re-traumatizes you, and then there is this trauma bond that gets developed, which is again an atypical symptom of trauma that is quite unique to pathological love relationships, to these narcissistic relationships. And then there is this cognitive dissonance, not only cognitive dissonance but emotional dissonance as well, the conflicting coexistence of opposite memories, opposite beliefs about the narcissist. Well, is he a narcissist? If she is a narcissist, how could she how did I feel so nice with her or him in that memory or at that event, and so on. You don't have that in a normal breakup. You know that that person, a healthy person, had some kind of consistency. It didn't work because of other stuff, but it isn't that confusing. That in itself is spirit breaking, it's soul shattering, earth shattering, that kind of trauma that you go through. It's not simple trauma, it's not PTSD, it's complex PTSD in my opinion. So that's why you need time, you need patience, you need compassion, you need a lot of support, you need strategy, you need proper guidance and proper therapy to heal from this kind of trauma. I explained it to you not to scare you, not to tell you that you're broken, but just to help you understand that it's not a relationship, it's not a breakup that you would naturally get over. It's pure trauma that you have been through. You have been depleted of your resources. You have been made to feel helpless, resourceless in a relationship. That's why you have the symptoms, you have the struggles that you're going through. You have the emotional turbulence and emotional dysregulation that you can't seem to fix. It will take time and patience, as I said, a lot of support. I hope in this episode I was able to explain to you the dynamics of the narcissistic relationship, and most importantly, how traumatization happens and how deep this trauma is. I'll talk with you very soon in the next one. Till then, let the healing begin.